A- And I am ready if you are.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. Well, before we start the meeting, I'd like to make an acknowledgement. We meet today on settled indigenous land, which is the traditional territory of the Chinookan people of the Wasco, Wishram, Warm Springs, and Grand Ronde tribes. Let us honor this land and its traditional native stewards, past, present, and future, and strive today to embody a commitment to cultural equity and reconciliation, ecological conservation, and sustainability. I hereby call the meeting to order at 4:02 p.m. Tia, will you do roll call, please?
Yes. Greg, Chair.
Here.
Megan Ramey, Vice Chair.
Here.
Tamara. Megan Larrabee. Elazar.
Here.
Gisela. Matt.
Here.
And Megan Larrabee. Megan, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay. I had to agree to being recorded before it would let me speak. So thank you.
Okay.
Right,
Thank you, Tia. Appreciate it. And Gisela did let us know she was unable to make it because she had to cover for somebody at work. Totally understandable. Appreciate that. Item number 3 on the agenda is approval of the September 18th minutes. Minutes for that meeting were provided in your packet. Are there any changes any member would like to make to that? Not hearing any, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 18th.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any further discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, chair votes aye. Minutes have been approved. We now have opportunity for public comment. Do we have any public in the meeting today?
No, we do not.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is the 24 financial audit report. Kathy and Fierce with Singer and Lewick are joining us. Please go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, or thank you all. I'm Kathy Wilson. I'm a director with Singer Lewack, and we're your new auditors. Fierce Katok is also with me today. He was the manager on your job. And we are here to present your June 30th, 2024 audit report. You should all have a copy of that report, as well as a letter to those charged with governance. That just kind of goes over some bullet points. We'll talk about that in a moment. Like to go over the report. There's really only 2 things in the report that belong to us. One is our independent auditor's report, and you'll find that on, if you're looking at a PDF copy, you'll find it on page 4. If you're looking at a printed copy, you'll find it as page A. And it first and foremost talks about our opinions related to the financial statements. And we've audited the district on a modified cash basis. And that means that you're not reporting all of the GAAP accrual entries. There's no net pension liability, no OPEB, no AR, no accounts payable. Those things are not included in here. It's mostly just cash. You do have one change in the report that you would see from cash basis, and that's that you have capital assets recorded as well, which is an allowed thing. And Emily has assisted the district with determining what should be there and what you guys would like to have included. So that's fantastic. We audited as of the year ended June 30th for the governmental activities and major funds related to that period, and have found, in our opinion, that those financial statements present fairly in all material respects the modified cash basis of reporting for governmental. There's an emphasis of matter in that opinion letter, and that's just pointing out the basis of accounting, which is a basis of accounting other than generally accepted accounting principles. And it's just to bring to your attention. There's some supplementary information that's included in the financial statements. And we provide what's called an in relation to opinion for those. Those are all your budgetary schedules. And you'll find those in the back beyond the footnotes. So that means that we looked at the information presented in those schedules and compared it to the information that's presented elsewhere in the financial statements, and found that in relation that information is also presented properly. So we have a report that's required by the Oregon state regulations related to your minimum standards. You'll find that all the way in the back on, I think it's page 29 if you're looking, nope, it's page 30 if you're looking at a PDF copy, or page 15 if you're looking at a printed copy. And so there's a bunch of stuff that we look at that is required by minimum standards and Oregon required statutes. And it's just related to a bunch of things: your budgeting, your public funds that you hold with financial institutions, procurement, all of those types of things. And we had nothing that came to our attention that would not make us believe that you guys are in material compliance with all of the requirements related to that. So that is, I'm not going to go over numbers or anything in the financial statements. If there's number information that you guys are interested in, I'll let Emily or Tia or Amy cover those items. But I'm open to questions on the financial statements themselves. Okay. I will go ahead and I will move on to the governance letter, which is the other item that was included in your packet. And that just covers all of the things related to our responsibilities for the financial statements, your responsibilities for financial statements, significant things you should know about, which would be like your estimates. So you do have capital assets reported in there. So accumulated depreciation is a significant estimate. And so that is just based on your estimated useful lives of the assets. We had no audit adjustments. That is very rare. And that's just kudos to your staff. They did a great job. The emphasis of matter, again, is in there. We didn't have any disagreements with management. We know that you guys contract with Marina and Company to provide that third-party contract accounting. So that's also included in there. And that's really, in a nutshell, kind of everything we have. I do want to say thank you to Amy and to Tia and staff at the district. This was a great first audit, probably the best first audit that we've ever had with a client. So I really want to thank them for being organized and having all the information we needed. And I'm going to turn it over to Fierce because he's going to talk about your STIF audit, which is your transportation improvement audit. Go ahead, Fierce.
All right. Yes. So in addition to the financial statements audit, the Oregon Department of Transportation also requires a STIF audit be performed. A STIF AUP is performed. So an AUP is an agreed upon procedure, and ODOT has a list of 8 procedures that an accountant has to perform in accordance with the law that they pass. And so this is required for any entity that receives STIF formula in discretionary fund, and STIF is defined as statewide transit improvement fund. All right, so for everyone. As a qualified entity or as a transportation district, that automatically is a qualified entity for ODOT. And so when you receive formula and discretionary funds, you are required to have an AUP, and that has to be submitted also to ODOT. And so there are 8 procedures, and we performed the 8 procedures as laid out by ODOT, and we did not find any non-compliance findings. We did have our draft report, and we sent it to Amy and Tia yesterday, and we just got the representation letter. So we're hoping to issue the report today. And I believe you don't have the draft with you because it was just finalized earlier this week. But yeah, but we're here to summarize the findings, that there are no findings for is in relation to the AUP. Kathy.
Then as you guys get that report, if you have questions, please reach out to us and we're happy to answer those.
Right.
Any questions? Okay, awesome. All right, well, we'll turn it back to you guys and let you continue with your meeting. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you
You
so
guys.
much, and really appreciated this experience. I would say it was, yeah, it was just a very informative, and I just liked how it went. It was very smoothly done, and we appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Awesome, great. Same on our side. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you, Kathy and Pierce. And great to hear the team perform really well. Awesome.
Awesome. All right,
Okay.
have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Nice work, team. Great to hear. Now we're on to agenda item number 6, which is quarterly financial report. That information is in your packet. Emily, you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Again, congratulations to everybody for getting a clean audit and it just going really smoothly. And I'm very, very pleased with the work that Singer Lewack did and just how professional and timely they were. And it was a fantastic audit experience, I think, on all fronts. So that is wonderful. And hopefully we can keep that positive relationship going moving forward. I was planning on just going over the quarterly financials for Q1, but I was expecting them to go over a little bit more of the final numbers in the audit. And since they didn't do so, if you don't mind, I'll just take a moment to go through those. Is that okay with everybody? Okay.
That'd be great.
Be great.
Perfect. Well, I will start there then. So if you turn to the audit and in the packet, the printed packet, it's page I, the very first page, is the management's discussion and analysis. So this is basically something that hasn't been included in your audits in prior years, but it's an opportunity. It's part of GAAP actually. So GAAP, you have to have a management's discussion and analysis because you guys present on a basis other than GAAP. We haven't been including that, but management made the decision this year to go ahead and include that report. And it's basically management's ability or chance to state from their view how the financial statements looked and what happened to this year and kind of toot their own horn a little bit and mention highlights and stuff. So I'm not going to go ahead and read that whole management's discussion and analysis. You are welcome to, but I will point out the highlights, which are on that first page, page I, which is that the statement of activities, the revenues exceeded expenditures by $440,000. Which increased your net position by that same amount that year, which means basically you made a lot more money than you spent. So that is positive. You also made significant improvements in operational efficiencies, which increased your revenue by 2% and decreased your non-capital related expenditures by 10%. So that's big and probably not something that we'll see forever, but for this last year, it's a great improvement over prior. And then that the district's expenditures remained within budget for the fiscal year, which is good. So you didn't go over budget and that you guys remain debt free. So other than credit cards, you don't have any long-term outstanding debt. So that is fantastic. If we go ahead and move to, I'm trying to figure out which one's the easiest one to look at. It's probably best to just go to the second page then, page II. Because it lays out both your statement of net position and your statement of activities kind of in a more condensed format and allows you to compare them to the prior year numbers, which aren't in the case of the rest of the financial statements where you don't get the comparative. But it just goes through and shows that your cash and equivalents were $1.6 million, which was a $600,000 increase over the prior year. Your capital assets in total, so that includes depreciation, went down a little bit, so you probably depreciated more assets than you purchased. But that's very typical. There wasn't anything wrong. You didn't lose any assets. You just had more depreciation this last year. Your liabilities were pretty much on par with the prior year, and your net position again increased by that $440,000. For the comparative statement of activities, Again, your revenues were higher, so you had $50,000 more in revenue. The majority of that came from state grants. You had a decrease in federal grants by about $246,000, but not. Yeah, so your state grants kind of made up for your decrease in federal grants. So you'll notice that your federal grants in the prior year, you were subject to single audit. You guys weren't subject to single audit this year, but next year you probably will be again. So that just fluctuates based on which grants you receive. And then
more, sorry, Emily, there was a question.
Sorry,
on,
just curious what that term means, a single audit.
Oh, okay. So federal single audit rules are basically if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funding in a fiscal year, you're subject to a single audit, which is an additional set of procedures that an audit firm is required to do to verify that you're in compliance with the federal laws and regulations with the federal funding.
that has a couple of different implications for us. A, it's a lot more work for the auditors, so there's a lot more cost. But also B, it's just additional work for staff to compile all the documentation required.
Okay, so this year the audit was like 32,000. I thought I saw. Next year it's what, more like 50, or do we have an idea?
Potentially. I think it all kind of depends on ensuring that we have all the documentation there. I think it's like an extra 6,000 or 7,000 grand, if I remember correctly with the contract. But we will definitely 100% be having one next year.
So and I said $750,000 in receipts. So it's actually $750,000 in expenditures, which is why you can see your federal grants for this year were actually 900,000, a little over 900,000, but you weren't subject for a single audit because a lot of that grant funding was reimbursements for the prior year's expenses. So you were subject to single audit in 23, fiscal year 23. You received some of that money in 24, so it made it look like you would be subject this year. And actually, we started the audit year thinking that we would be, but when we ran the numbers for the actual expenditures, we were under that $750,000 limit, so we didn't have to do a single audit this year, which is nice because it saves money. Yeah, did I answer your question fully? Okay.
You did, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the expenditures, so materials and services, so that's everything that you spend that's not personnel related. And so that also includes your depreciation expense was $766,000. So a decrease still of about $200,000 over the prior year, and then your personnel expense decreased by about $50,000 to 1.58 million instead of 1.6 from the prior year. And your capital assets again decreased a little bit. So yeah, that is the overview of last year's financial statements. Does anyone have any other questions? I can go through the other statements and stuff. I just don't want to overwhelm you with financial information since we also have the quarterly statements to go through.
No, I think we're good to move on to the quarterly statements.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. Yeah, if you do have any more questions, so again, I didn't draft the statements this year, but I did help prepare all of the numbers so that the auditors could draft the statements, and I helped draft the MD&A. So if you guys do have any questions on anything in there, feel free to reach out to Amy or whatever, and she can get your questions to me. So, Amy, is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen?
Please do.
Okay.
It
is disabled. I don't know. You have to enable me to be able to share. Oh, Tim's working on
it's
it.
in process, yeah.
IT.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, we need to hold music.
Maybe advanced sharing options.
You should be able to just on the bottom under share, there's a little, yeah. Oh, you got it. There we go. Yep, you got it. It's just the multiple participants.
If it doesn't, yeah, we don't have to. I just
give
thought
it
it
a
helps.
try, Emily.
Okay.
You should be able to now.
All right. I think. Well, you tell me. I push the buttons. We'll see.
You have started sharing screen. We can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm just gonna go, I did this last time and I thought it worked fairly well. Again, I would love your feedback if you prefer a different format or something, but I thought it worked well to kind of go through my overview of the financial statements and the financial statements in combination with each other, just so you can kind of follow my way through the numbers and I'm not just speaking them at you. But if you have any questions or anything, I can't see you because all I can see is what I'm sharing right now. So if you have any questions, please speak up and I will try and answer them as we go. So to start with the statement of financial position, the assets of the district at the end of the first quarter, you had $1.4 million in the bank, which is an increase of $256,000 over the prior years at the same point. So as of September 30th in 23, your credit card and other liabilities were down. So again, this is a cash basis only, so it's not including accounts payable. But your credit card payable was $2,000, and then you had a slightly negative balance, so actually an asset balance on your accrued payroll, which had to do with some payroll withholdings, but those got taken care of in October, so you can kind of ignore those. So at the end of the first quarter, your total liabilities was just over $2,000, and last year you had almost none. So that means your total equity is almost identical to your cash balance. At 1.4 million, that's a $254,000 increase over the same point last year. You will notice there's a slight change in your restricted fund balance. So again, in us kind of going through the STIF tracking and increasing our procedures in keeping a better handle on the STIF funds and how much is received versus how much is spent, we've started tracking those a little better. So that's why you see a slightly less round number than the 200,000 from the prior year. And there were also some other monies we hadn't pulled out specifically, and we have done so now as of the end of last year, but that hadn't happened as of the first quarter. So those are the differences there. Your restricted fund balance is $273,000, which just means that you can't spend it on anything. There are some restrictions that are external to the district that limit your ability to spend that money. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move on? Okay.
Is that money separate from, so like the top two lines, we've got the top two bank accounts. Last year looked like there wasn't a money market stiff funds account, or is that previous year number just incorporate both of those? Is that, and we're breaking them out this year?
Correct. So that's part of the difference, is that the district in prior years did not actually, like, we kept those numbers on like a sheet somewhere, but they weren't actually held in a separate account. And we are now doing that, where we're holding those monies separately.
It also allows us to get more saving or interest, because those are in a money market account. Yeah, instead of the checking.
Great. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome. And technically the stiff monies, you also have to track the interest earned. So that's part of the reason we made it its own account, is because it's easier to separate out the stiff portion of that interest as compared to if it's commingled with the rest of your money. It's a little harder to keep track of the interest that just the stiff funds earn. So yeah, you can see the 273,000 matches perfectly with the restricted balance.
And doing it the way that we used to do in prior years was compliant with ODOT regulations. This is just a cleaner way to do it.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So the revenues, total revenue for the first quarter was just over $500,000. So that's less than the prior year by about $250,000. Again, some of that was grants that we received for the prior year that got received late in the year. But anyway, so the total decrease in grant revenues was about, total between federal and state was about $350,000. Some of that came through actually at like October 1st. We had to deposit for some of that money. So it looks unreasonably low compared to what you should have been if we just got a late deposit. So that's some of that. We did also have more revenues in other areas that offset that decrease. So contract revenue was $60,000 that didn't exist in the prior year. Your interest income, again, like we were talking about, moving the money to the money market funds and then also the LGIP account, which earns a much higher interest rate. You can see you made significantly more money on interest in this quarter than you did the first quarter of last year. And then you got some more reimbursement income for various things. I'll talk about some of that later on. Moving now to the cost of goods sold. The total cost of goods sold for the first quarter was $209,000. That's a $24,000 increase over the first quarter of the prior year. Some of that, so fuel is obviously one of the things we don't really get to say how much we spend on because it just costs what it costs. But thankfully, fuel prices aren't as high as they were in the prior year. So we spent $47,000 on fuel in the first quarter, the $23,000 decrease. The vehicle expenses, which is janitorial expense, maintenance and repairs, tires, and anything basically for the maintenance and operation of the vehicles, was $44,000. That is significantly higher. Some of that has to do with we got a new mechanic that was doing some additional repairs. And then we also had a more significant repair bill that was related to one of the insurance claims that's included up here in the $12,000.
Hey,
The
Emily,
operating
I have a
expenses.
question quick.
Yes.
Back up on, sorry, revenue. It's like the last sentence of revenue. It says, I don't understand how the buses are related to that.
Okay. So that's a good question. When you guys have a grant for an asset, it's a reimbursement grant. So until you get that asset and pay for it, you don't get the reimbursements from the grants. So
Got it.
did that answer your question?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. You're welcome. So the driver expenses were almost identical to the prior year. Advertising and marketing is down by quite a bit. And contract grant match funds, those are up because we had a late billing from one of your other agencies. And there's another piece of that also that I will talk about at the very end. Yeah, so I'll just hold off on that for the moment. Expenditures, admin expenses, which is building, operating office expenses, professional fees, and other admin expenses, is significantly higher than the prior year. Most of that has to do with professional fees, and a large portion of that has to do with the fact that we did the audit so early this year. So instead of paying for our audit in December and January, we were paying for a lot of it in the first quarter. So that's a big chunk of that. There are a few other things, but in general, we are still under budget on everything, or on track on budget. So you can look at the details of the budgets later on if you want to. And then for personnel expenses, I'm getting behind myself over here. There we go. Personnel expenses, total personnel was $380,000, which is $15,000 more than last year, but still quite a bit under budget because obviously we include, raises and everything year over year. So we're still significantly under budget on our personnel expenses. And we have had a very little bit of capital outlay this year, $30,000 for some new cameras and ski and snowboard equipment. The amount of the budget that hasn't been spent, which isn't shown on this report, but on the budget report, is for, again, those new buses, which we have not yet received. So we look significantly under budget on capital outlay, but whenever we get those new buses, that will change. So our total operating revenue through the first quarter was $182,000, or a deficit of $182,000. So we spent $182,000 more dollars than we received, for a total change of negative $361,000. Again, there is some flux between when you spend the money and when you get the reimbursement. So that is not a problem. It's just a timing difference. So does anyone have any questions on that before I move on to the last page of my report? Okay, so the AR aging summary, you were owed like $200 at the end of the quarter, which is not a lot, and nothing's overdue, so that's great. Your AP, this report shows that you only owed like $300. That's not true because we pulled the reports with Amy being out of town and trying to get the board packets out early. Not all of the AP had been entered, so it probably was closer to like the $2,500 to $3,000. That's normal. at the end of each month, but it just looked artificially low because of the date. You know, I pulled it on October 2nd. So we hadn't gotten all the bills yet for the end of September. Our budget, though, continues to look on track. I'll just go up to the budget reports here. So we're still on budget. Nothing looking crazy there. A couple other updates. We did update and merge a couple new account numbers. We were already working on that prior to the auditors coming, just because I was trying to make their job a little easier, and it seems like that worked. So that was good. But also I think it adds a little clarity. So if you see some of the, like, part of the cost of goods sold, for example, some of those buckets look slightly different than they have in past years. We just rearranged where some of those things were being reported. So we're trying to add clarity and progression of accounts to be more consistent going forward. So if anyone has questions there, I'd be happy to go more into that, but that's kind of the overview. One of the other changes we made this last quarter is the district historically has netted the fair revenue when you get money from, you know, Token Transit or whoever's receiving those funds. We just are reporting the net revenues. So, you know, you get gross revenue and then they take their fees and we're just reporting the net. But this last quarter, we determined that we wanted to be claiming the full gross revenues and then accounting for those fees as part of your cost of goods sold. So that's one of the reasons your fair revenues look significantly better in the first quarter. And part of the reason we're wanting to do that is we're wanting to track those fair expenses or the processing fees from the credit card companies and stuff a little more closely, because those fees are kind of significant. But it is a change from how we have historically been doing it. We also have the new LJIP account, which again earned significantly more money this last year than it did in the prior year. So that's great news and seems to be going well. And then the auditors finished the audit, which is great. And last but not least, the staff and I have been working on a couple more spreadsheets and improving some processes for the grant related tracking revenue and expenses as it relates to routes. So all of that, in my opinion, is going very well, but I would be happy to go into more detail if anyone has specific questions on any of those things.
I was very curious on why our AP and AR was so low, so I'm glad you included that in your discussion. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Just the earliest. This is a record. We've never pulled reports like had our bank reconciliations done in time to pull reports that early in the month. So that's a record.
We're doing a lot of records this year.
We did.
Getting our audit done the earliest we've ever done it. Yes. So,
yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Emily. I appreciate all your time and your effort. And I do want to highlight once again, Emily and Tia have put a lot of work into process improvements and really worked hard on ensuring that the auditors had everything they needed, which is why we got such a glowing review. So I'll make sure that is known. So thank you again for all of your help, both of you.
Yeah.
All right, I should look here because I'm looking at the screen. Thank you.
You are welcome. And I want to thank you guys again for the opportunity and just say, like, I mean, I deal with a lot of local governments and other places and varying, you know, sizes and complexities and stuff. But it's really helpful to have a board that's interested and involved in the operations of the district. So that is also a kudos to you guys for being interested and active in your oversight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you finish your report? I wasn't paying attention. Thank you, Emily. Really appreciate your work there and work with the team on that.
No problem. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, I'll see you guys next month. Or, well,
Okay.
next quarter, actually.
Well, quarter, yeah.
See ya.
Thanks, Emily.
See you, Emily.
Bye.
All right. Another great report. We're on to agenda item number 7, which is resolution and action items. Amy, do you want to walk us through those?
Yes. So the first item we have is approval of the safety committee bylaws. So we kind of had an aha moment when working on our driver meeting agenda and trying to get all ensure that we're reviewing our driver meetings, and we realized that we did not have to have the driver meetings every month, and the only reason that we were doing it was to satisfy the requirement of having safety committee meetings every month. And we realized we could meet that requirement, but not necessarily have the entire team meet on a monthly basis, which sometimes can be good, but a lot of times it is just really difficult to get everybody in the same room. And it's not always adding value. Sometimes it can be detracting. So we decided to revamp how we do the safety committee. And with that, I decided to create bylaws. Those are not necessarily required, they are recommended. So we created bylaws for the safety committee. I have included them in your packet. And our ask is for you to approve them. And I mean, this was basically a boilerplate bylaws from OSHA, and then we added some additional information that made it relevant to our operations. So we're asking for approval of those bylaws. Any questions?
But you're still having regular safety discussions with the team on a regular basis.
Yeah, so it will be monthly safety meetings with the safety committee, which is, I think right now it's 2 drivers and myself and another supervisor. And then we're still gonna do driver meetings likely quarterly when we have big changes like bids and route changes. So that way everybody's on the same page. And when we just try to get drivers together at least every 3 months or more frequently if we feel like it's needed.
Just gives us a little more wiggle room of when we actually have those driver meetings.
And then part of that plan too is that we'll have more of like a comment box style. That's so all the questions and comments will get filtered through the leads on the driver safety committee, and that will get filtered to us for a discussion with the driver representatives and management.
Okay.
This document is inclusive of both at the CAT office / operations center and on the road, right?
Correct.
So I did a word search of accident, and there were like 6 instances of it, and at least 2 or 3 should say crash instead of accident.
Okay.
Because some using the term accident in relation to the workplace, like somebody falls off a ladder. I mean, I would argue that wasn't an accident, that there should have been some SOP to prevent that from happening. But like in terms of talking about the street, there is no such thing as an accident.
Okay, so your suggestion is just to review and change the some of the wording to accident instead of crash.
Opposite.
Or sorry, accident.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any concerns with that?
Nope.
Okay, that would also be consistent with our operational our operations report too.
Okay, good point. Any other discussion? Okay, entertain a motion to approve the new safety committee bylaws.
I think I would just add with the suggested terminology change.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make that motion with the suggested with my recommendation to change accident to crash where it's relevant.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, chair votes aye. 7A passes. Let's move on to 7B.
Awesome. And just one addition to that, Megan will make those changes and then we'll send it to you to make sure we're on the same page.
Copy, thank you.
Awesome. All right, so approval of 5311 and 5310 grant applications. So these are formula grants. However, in order to be consistent with our financial management policy, I did want to make sure you guys had the opportunity to review the numbers and approve them. So at 5311, this will be, we'll be using the allocated 5311 funds to pay for the Hood River City route, the Upper Valley, and the Dial-A-Ride routes. That is different from this current biennium. The current biennium, we only use it for Dial-A-Ride and Upper Valley. However, we are getting more money the next biennium. The total cost of all of those services is estimated at just under 2 million. And then the estimated grant allocation would be 952,000. The match for this funding source is, I think it's like 80-20 for, no, it's 89 something and 10% for administration, and then it's essentially 50-50 for operations. And then we do have another grant that is going to be covering some of the Dial-A-Ride routes, and then we'll be using stiff formula funds to cover the match. And then 5310, we'll be using those funds for preventive maintenance and mobility management activities. That is the same for what we are using those funds for this biennium. And the total cost for all of those is just under 300,000. This grant would be 150,000 of that, with an expected match of about 7,000, and then other grants would cover about 100,000 of that as well.
Should the grant allocation, expected match, and covered through another grant equal the total cost? Because it doesn't seem to add up.
So it should.
157, 160, 260 grand on the bottom one.
Right, it doesn't.
And the other one's off at like 90 grand maybe.
I will need to relook at that. The estimated grant allocation would not change.
Okay.
And the expected match will not be different. The only thing that might be messing up those calculations is covered through another grant.
Okay.
Let's see, sorry, is everything okay?
Still
Those
recording.
beeps? Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I guess the question is if that concerns you. I mean, it should. Sorry, let me think about that for a second.
That's probably something we should have noticed before we were in the meeting.
No, it's I don't know why it's not matching. But unfortunately we can't wait till the next meeting because it's due right before.
Any time to kind of go back through that right now, or is there? how long will it take?
Well, it's actually, it looks like it's due the next board meeting. So in theory, I could get approval of the next one and then I could submit it right after our board meeting. Let's go ahead and let me figure out these numbers because that should be solidified. And unfortunately, it's been a couple weeks since I created those numbers. And it might take a little bit more than just a couple minutes for me to figure out what that inconsistency is. So I want to make sure.
Amy, is there a way to approve the grant applications, with Matt suggesting that they balance out accordingly, and then you provide the information and we can email our confirmation? Or is there a way to do that so we're not waiting that long? So you have everything ahead of time?
Yeah, we could do that. I think, and then what we can, the grant allocation doesn't change. So that is, I can tell you that's correct. And we can't apply for any more than those funds. There just must be some miscalculation on the other numbers. So I think you could approve if you wanted to do so, and then with the expectation that you will be receiving an updated list to kind of explain those numbers.
Okay.
And then we can just do it through email, where that
Sounds reasonable to me.
So approval of the overall grant application amount.
yes.
Okay.
With the
I think
understanding
it'd
that,
probably be, I think that'd be a good way to proceed instead of delaying it, as long as we get the information.
okay,
If everybody's okay with that. Matt, does that work?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cause ruckus here. Just kinda
No, that's
looking-
perfect. It's what we should, that's
No,
why we're a
that-
board, right? We're supposed to question that.
that is your job. Thank you. And I'm sorry that was not, there's something wrong there.
Well, I'd entertain a motion, and maybe Matt, it should come from you, kind of with your stipulation there, and see if we get a second on it.
Yeah, sure. So move to accept the grant applications as stated, with the stipulation that we have some clarification on the $117,000 gap between grant allocations and match funds. Does that sound right?
No, that sounds good. I think I figured it out.
Okay, sweet.
But I still want
I
to,
retract it, no.
I'm still gonna send information that kind of details it all, but I think the thing is that I was kind of including some stiff formula funds in the covered by another grant.
Okay.
And that is also the match. But I want to first confirm that before I say
Okay.
that. So I think let's keep your
Motion for
your
that.
statement,
Okay.
and then I'll send that out later.
I'll second Matt's proposal or amendment to the,
Grant application.
Well said, Tamara.
okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the grant applications, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, chair votes aye. Thank you. We're now on to 7C, approval of the financial audit as is presented earlier. Amy, go ahead.
Yes, so we are just asking for approval of the audit that was done by Singer Lueck. And you guys should discuss or vote on approving the 2024 financial audit. We will then, if approved, we will send the audit documents and management response to the Oregon State, or Oregon Secretary of State and ODOT.
Perfect.
I move to approve the audit as presented to us today.
Thank you, Tamara. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, I think we had two there. I know Matt, it seemed like Matt chimed in first.
Double up.
Okay, any further discussion on the audit? Okay, all those in favor of approving the 24 financial audit, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, chair votes aye. 7C is approved. All right, we're on to agenda item number 8, which is the operations manager report. Jeff, you want to present that?
Sure. Cool. So we have overall safety score. We're back up to 99, or I guess it's the same as last month. And yeah, did pretty good. No crashes, no harsh events. And yes, speeding was low. So that's good. Operations data. So we had vehicle hours driven was 1,111. Vehicle miles driven was 36,472. Fuel cost 14,926, which came out to about 40 cents per mile, and then the yellow ones are so there was the way I have been calculating the fuel cost has I've been using the Carson portal, which is Carson Fuel, and wasn't using QuickBooks, and I was out of town, so Amy and Tia were doing that section of this and found that so those are updated numbers that include our fuel and costs at Weatherford and then Jubitz, which is just occasionally if we're in an emergency situation or a more convenient situation that we think is more cost effective, it just allows us to have more access to other gas stations. So not as high spendings as we do Carson as our main spot, but anyways, so that's that update. The yellow one, I mean, those have been adjusted, right, Amy? Okay, cool. So the other ones are the new numbers, so they should be different than what you saw before. Formal customer complaints. There were 2 vehicle incidents, 2 customer incidents, 7 vandalism, 1. The formal complaint was a passenger stated that she was discriminated against for being a woman. The incident was reviewed. Basically, the driver, we watched the video, and the driver was actually very cordial, and they were actually just questioning their pass. So we didn't find that there was any discrimination happening. The driver was following our policies and just inquiring. Passenger claimed that driver harassed them by telling them they cannot eat or use profanity on the bus. There was no follow-up required. I'll kind of get back to that. It's because then one of the later incidents. Vehicle incidents. CG bus was brake checked by another vehicle on I-84. The incident was reported to the police. The police were basically like, you know, they couldn't do anything about it without it. Like, I think the incident report came in and I tried. We reported it, like, it has to be reported immediately, basically, because it wasn't. They couldn't send a patroller out to catch the person on the highway.
Does that mean, does brake checking mean slamming on the brakes in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Thanks. Then a bus made contact with a bus barn support pole in the garage or in the bus barn. There's that's just hasn't happened in a while, but it happens here now and then because it's not that big of a garage for a lot of buses. Yeah, no major damage. Other issues, there was a fire on ODOT right of way. I think we talked about that in the last meeting, but it was down here in the lower lot, and the Hood River Fire Department extinguished that fire. Then Hood River Police asked CAT to help investigate a stolen bike that involved CAT property. So we were helping get video of somebody that was stealing a bike and took it towards basically where that fire was. I'm not sure. We didn't have a follow-up on that, but just helped the police try to track someone down or track the bike down. The driver locked the keys in a bus at Gateway. One of the passengers actually assisted the driver and helped them regain access because they were able to get into the ADA door where the driver wasn't and unlock the vehicle. Field supervisor was changing a headlight and the impact driver kicked back and hit them in the face. Medical attention was not required. And a driver reported tweaking their back. Also, medical attention was not required. Passenger threatened to call police. The police on driver after driver asked them not to eat and use profanity on the bus. Management reviewed the incident and addressed issue with the passenger. That was the one that's it was two separate incident reports. One for the passenger, and one from the supervisor, one from the driver at the time. Metal ammo box was left on the bus, and the police were called to investigate because it seemed suspicious, and the ammo box didn't contain any ammo in it or anything threatening. Yeah, no harsh events. Vandalism, there was somebody spray painted a stencil of a gun up by our bus stop and just covered it with gray paint so it's not there anymore. Cool.
Sorry, before we move on.
Yes.
I did want to do a little check-in with the board. Are these comments about these different incidents, are these helpful? Do you appreciate this detail, or
I do, and I was gonna have a follow-up about the incident with the passenger that was using profanity on the bus, because I was a passenger on a bus, and maybe this was August, but I can't believe I never reported it. Anyway, so we were coming home from a trip, our family was, we were exhausted. And it was all good from Gateway until Cascade Locks when two guys got on. And just the entire dynamic of the bus changed. It went from being really quiet and peaceful to these two guys were just like super loud. And they were also just using a ton of profanity. My daughter was right in front of one of them. And they were just talking about just like nonsense that shouldn't have been. So I turned around and told them to please be quiet. And then they started using like freedom of speech threats with me. And so my husband got involved and was like, just please like be quiet and let everybody have their peace. And the driver never had to get involved, but that's like one of those, like as a bus passenger, you should have a peaceful experience. And so I don't know if that's the same person, but those kind of situations just kind of drive me crazy because it really detracts from the experience.
I think in those scenarios, again, I'd appreciate to know about them, because the same situation, they use the freedom of speech card on us, and in some ways, yes, they're we can't really like do anything except suggest that they, we have policies written, or it's not technically policies, they're rules of the bus that you're not supposed to be swearing and using profanity, but we get into a kind of a gray area, with telling people how they can talk. But if we have records of that and it's a reoccurring person, usually those incidents, I feel like they build into this one. Thankfully didn't. It kind of dissolved. But that way we have a record if something does escalate into, I guess, more so if it becomes a threatening environment to riders, like we've had, passengers talk about, doing harm to people on the bus or in general, and it starts to like be a place where it's uncomfortable, then we can get the police involved and have people removed from the bus, but we can't really remove people for just, unfortunately, for being loud and swearing. We can only ask them to be quiet.
And I think what we've seen is that typically those people who don't necessarily respond to us, kind of like asking them to be aware of their surroundings and aware that there's other people on the bus, it's not just them. They do typically escalate, and they do typically turn into situations where other actions have to be taken. So I think it's helpful, and yes, we do have a high threshold before we can actually trespass someone from our bus. But it also should be an environment for everyone to be able to enjoy. And that's another comment that I've received actually about the ski bus or the Gorgeous Mountain bus a lot, is that would you mind reading? Thank you. Is that some people choose not to ride it because there are sometimes some rambunctious younger riders who, or just riders in general, who tend to swear a lot and make the experience less pleasurable for everybody.
That's kind of a universal issue.
Yeah.
That I keep reading about. It turns people off from riding when they have, an uncomfortable situation with vocabulary or, activity, which is to some degree harmless, but it's still uncomfortable. And I think that calling them on it is the right way to go.
And Amy, to your original question there, I do think it's appropriate to share this kind of information with the board. It gives us insight to what's going on and what we're hearing in the community, and that things are being addressed. And so I do appreciate that level of detail.
Okay, awesome.
agree.
Great. Just wanted to be sure. Cool. Oh, go ahead, Megan.
Oh, I agree. I like knowing the detail.
Okay. I'll move on to other happenings. which is Oregon surplus items. So bus 214 is one of the Gilligs up at the lot. That one's sold. It hasn't been removed yet, but the funds are in. So I'm hoping that's gonna, usually they have 7 days to get it off our property. So, or it's not our property, the property we're renting up on Tucker Road. And then there's 2 other buses, 212 and 213, that are gonna go up to auction pretty soon here. And we sold and removed the exercise equipment and we're excited to get these buses out of here, so we're not paying insurance and parking on them anymore. And
Are we taking the exercise equipment proceeds and putting it towards the Christmas party, or?
well, not exactly.
No?
but-
There wasn't a ton of proceeds
Okay.
because of the way that we had to do it, but we made some individuals who got that equipment very happy. So
Yeah, and then I think
Accessible.
going forward, we're kind of learning, so these smaller dollar items, if they're not over $1,000, I should just learn this today, we can actually set up our own account through the surplus and do our own auctions. I don't know exactly what that looks like, because again, I learned it today, but it'll streamline it, and I'm hoping that it's not clear to me, but I'm hoping that we can get the money for it, because if anything that sells for under $500, the surplus just keeps 100% of what's sold. So hopefully this is a better avenue for us and them, because they don't really want to deal with small dollar items, because it's not worth all their resources. Gorge Mountain update. We are currently getting ski racks made for the buses. It was pretty cool to go down and see them being made. They're all framed out, and so those are on track. And Schlosser's machine is doing a great job working with us and keeping us involved at every step. And they actually I went over there and actually have none of them ski, but they got a pair of skis so they could actually test it out and see if it's working. And and open to suggestions and modifications. So that's exciting for us. Just started looking at the schedule. Our goal is to one of the big things we heard last year is people were bummed that we don't have Sunday evening service. So we're working on a solution to have an evening bus for Sunday evenings. Not only does that help, provide more service, it's actually that evening bus is important because we bring so many people up in the morning, and we only have one bus going down on days that we don't run evenings, or coming back down the hill. And so that will, for those busy days of the week, that'll help. So we don't have to run a second bus that we weren't planning on running to get people down the mountain.
we do have fairly limited funds this year, since we're still waiting on the flat funding, the federal land access program funds. So we may, depending on how snowy it is this year, and when Meadows starts their night program, we might have to adjust when we end our night skiing or things like that, to make sure that the budget all evens out. But one thing we found from last year is that because of the nature of the service, there are days when we have to shut down, and that does allow us to plan for some other or extra service hours.
Yeah, I think
Back some of that for.
Yeah.
last year I predicted like 1,400 service hours, and I think we used just a little over 1,000 service hours. And this year I'm predicting like just under 1,400, like 13 and a half. So see how it goes.
With that extra bus, you're saying?
With the Sunday. Yeah.
Greg, when is opening day gonna be?
Mother Nature, let's ask him.
Open
think it's
today after
scheduled for-
Thanksgiving, but I hope to
Okay.
open sooner.
Okay,
Yeah, we're planning on, but I'm based off the numbers I'm basing off start on December 14th, which is the same week that nights start, which is the December 19th, I believe. And then last year I think nights didn't start till, I don't think we started nights till January. Like second or third, yeah. And then Freightliner update. Those are the new buses. I just got an update today that they are just waiting on bike racks, and then they're gonna get shipped to Portland, and they said hopefully by the end of next week. I'm gonna be conservative and say that we'll probably see those buses, don't quote me on this, but probably beginning of December, and give Shecky a month to get it wrapped and do all they have to install cameras and add all the extra tech. So that'll be exciting to have those, and we're moving the current Georgetown buses or CGE buses over to Georgetown Mountain. So yeah, excited for new vehicles. And then
I just want to do one extra plug for the fact that we're getting ski and snowboard holders on the back of the bus. That will reduce a lot of safety concerns from prior years when people had to bring the gear with them onto the bus. So
Put some more focus on that for sure.
yeah.
But that's only going to be on the two internationals.
Yeah.
The Gilligs are still going to be carried on. Cool. And then the other things, just letting you guys know that we're going to be, me, Amy, and Tia are going to be, what are the dates?
It's October 27th through 30th.
Be at Seaside for the OTA conference.
Yeah. So that's the Oregon Transit Association conference. That's where we get to be really nerdy about transportation.
Yeah.
Specifically public
Seaside,
transit. Yeah.
That's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
Super rough.
Yeah. We do, however, are getting scholarships for that. So a very minimal amount will be required from that.
Okay, employee of the month.
Yes.
Cool. Starla Jones. Starla is thoughtful in every aspect of her work. She consistently treats passengers with kindness while remaining firm on our policies, handling difficult conversations with ease and grace. She never takes negative responses personally and maintains great communication with her coworkers. Always eager to take on more tests, she also performs outstanding post-trip inspections, leaving her buses spotless, a detail that doesn't go unnoticed by her fellow drivers. Yeah.
I want to add one thing. She was actually the driver that was dealing with the passenger that was sorting on the bus, and she was the one that asked them to not do that. And when we were viewing the footage, it was like the nicest discussion that I think I've ever seen, and definitely
Well, her side was, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
her side was, and the way that she managed that situation was, I think, a learning thing for me, and I took some notes from what she did. But so really appreciate her.
Cool. Just a quick review of the ridership. We are down from last month. That's expected with the reduction of service. No white salmon, and just the seasons, the tail end of the season, things are slowing down. There was an increase in Upper Valley, which not super high, but I don't have enough data to show anything. But I'm hoping that maybe the new service is the new route is helping people. We'll see. We'll find that over the next few months. Over last year, we're up 10% in ridership. Let's see. Oh yeah, the white salmon. I just did a quick number crunch on the white salmon in 2023. We did 226 riders for the whole short 3-month season, and this year we did 407 riders. So that's a nice increase that we saw in the white salmon service.
I think the big win there is that we did have a 10% increase from the same month from the prior year. That is actually a pretty big jump.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and then that translates also to the riders per hour, which is we have 5.32 versus 4.8 last year. Yeah. And that concludes our report.
Am I taking over?
So I think it's your turn.
Well, I think it's the executive director's report next, right?
Well, yes, that is true.
But Megan, if you want to take over for safety reasons, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I would like to, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for
It
taking
was
that.
cool though, I gotta say, come on.
Okay, I will go ahead and move on to the executive director report. So all items are informational only. The first piece, the interregional transit hub that we are working on creating with the Port of Hood River, and the one that we have received some funding for the architectural design component. And then we've also submitted a grant application for the actual construction there. We are working on the intergovernmental agreement. It is in draft form, and I'm working with Kevin Greenwood over at the port. And I'm hoping to in November to have it ready for you guys to review. Normally, I typically don't bring all intergovernmental agreements, but because of the price point and the actual activities that we're working on, I do want to get your guys' approval for that.
I have a question on that after, sorry, I didn't realize you weren't done. I am less interested in the I guess the IGA and more in the specifically the architecture as it's facing the street and the, I guess the facade in relation to the street. Like this same discussion happened with May Street Elementary when it was being redesigned, and all I wanted to do was see the transportation plan for it, and they were like, oh, look at this pretty building and all the windows that are going to face the mountains, and I was like, I just care about the sidewalks and where the bike racks are going to be. Like, and so I would love to see those, and I know it's not going to be like an approval thing, but whenever you get that.
Yeah, that's really good to know, and I think we should actually, let's work that into the IGA to make sure that that piece is clear, that the design should be reviewed and approved by the CAP board. Because I think that's important. I mean, either way, I would plan on making sure you guys were looped in and on board with whatever the plans were. But I think that would make sense to make sure that is included so that it's documented. And that's really why I like IGAs, is because it makes things incredibly clear. I also plan on having a maintenance component in there. It might be addressed through an amendment, but that I want to be added. Also, it'll include kind of the overall intent right now is to work with the ports contractor who already has the ability to do the architecture and design for this, but they also have a transportation background. So the intent there is to use their contractor and better use resources, both ours and the ports. And then there's a couple other things that we're working on, but yeah. So at the next meeting, just plan to review it, and then we'll go from there. The next one is the Hood River City Upper Valley Route Planning Update. So as I have been talking to you all in the past couple meetings, we are working with an outside consultant to review our Hood River City route and our Upper Valley route so that we can move forward with updating the routes per the transit master plan with the overall intent of increasing the ridership, but also the ease of use and convenience of the Hood River City route, but also transitioning the Upper Valley route from a deviated fixed route into a fixed route, allowing for more usage and to just be a better service. Of course, we also have that we'll be extending the demand response service area once we do that. I do want to prepare you all that we are going to have to do some, we have to make some compromises when we're looking at this new service. And likely the compromises are going to be the frequency. But I think it kind of, instead of a 45-minute frequency, we're more likely to go sorry, kitty cat. It will probably go to about an hour frequency throughout the day, and then at peak times it'll be about a half-hour frequency. So these have not been finalized. I'm assuming that next meeting I will have more information for you all, and I will help you. I'm going to be asking you all to help me make those decisions and weigh in on what you feel is the best for the community. But I do want you to know that because of funding and the fact that we are estimating these operation or these services to get even more expensive. We are going to be looking at some compromises. But I think overall, it's going to do a better job of serving our community.
Are we getting feedback from writers? I mean, how are we gauging that? Sort of
So that'll be a big part of the piece, which is why I am not wanting to make these changes until next July, because this is going to be a process.
right. Okay.
First, I want to get the buy-in from you all or your thoughts, and then we will need to go to our SIF advisory committee, and then we will need to do a engagement process, outreach process as well, because we are adjusting from what we had in our transit master plan to a degree.
Hi, Amy. I have a request that for the engagement process, you might want to involve the staff at Mid Valley, Y East, and Parkdale Elementary, because there are 3 big employment centers. And I have found that the earliest bus in the morning doesn't get me to those schools in time for school start time. It might also help some students that, I don't know, so maybe sometimes the bus doesn't work, but in terms of the Safe Routes to School planning process for each of the schools, that's starting up in January. So I have to make sure and involve you in that, because that will, how does the sidewalks connect to the school and or to the bus stop and all that stuff?
Yes, that would be really important. Thank you. And I'd love to be part of that. Yes, they are on my list. So not only the staff, but also parents of students in the Upper Valley. And then also just I think that Upper Valley service is going to be kind of primarily go more to a commuter service and help provide service for people who are trying to go back and forth between Hood River and Upper Valley for work, but also potentially for school related activities, etc. So,
thank you.
Yeah. And then the next piece is the review of the summer 2024 Columbia Gorge Express Multnomah Falls report. I realized today that while I got you the board materials before I went on vacation, I also made a couple of mistakes. Not only just the one in the memo that we've already discussed regarding the grant applications, but also I'm missing some data on part 1. I did not include the boarded riders, the service hours, or the boarded riders per hour. So I am sorry for that, and I will update that and send that to you all. But I did want to highlight that a couple of big takeaways. So there was an increase in ridership on our Columbia Gorge Express for the time period of the time use permits at Multnomah Falls. And when we had the permit checkers that we were contracting through Sasquatch shuttles. There was more ridership and there was less service hours. So to me, that was pretty, and that was a good sign. We did have also a higher boarded riders per hour, almost an entire boarded rider per hour increase. And there was more fare revenue. It was a cheaper service. And I would say overall, it was a successful first year with using Sasquatch shuttles as that contractor. They were very professional and they devoted a lot of resources into ensuring their folks were trained on conflict management and working with their other partners. So administratively, there was a lot less work needed from myself and Tia this year. So any questions on those?
That's just a short term that we're involved
Yes.
with that. I mean, during it's just the peak, like, is it? Remind me, is that from Memorial Day to Labor
It's
Day?
Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Who manages it after?
So no one. So
Okay.
the permit, the time use permits are only in effect from those periods. It should probably be longer, but right now there's not the resources or frankly, the long-term solution.
Because it was not last weekend, the weekend before, driving by there and they had closed the parking already and people were lined up. So I was curious.
Yeah, I think based on the amount of times that I see that gate is closed, because I do get automatic updates every time that gate is closed. I would say that this program could probably go into the end of October.
Yeah.
But there's not allocated funding and there is no long-term solution really, in order to mitigate the traffic congestion that went in the falls. And just a reminder, we did not pay for that service. We received outside contract funds this year from about 4 different sources. And we're trying to work out now how it's going to get paid for next year. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? Cool. I will send an updated version of that report as well as the memo.
Okay.
By the end of this week. All right, Megan, you can go
Yep.
on to the next item.
All right, we're on to discussion items. Does any board member have any additional items they would like to discuss? I have a question regarding the upcoming election. This is like just general for the group. Is there a candidate forum or whoever hosts that candidate forum, do they I don't know how to put this. Like, essentially, I want to know if like candidates support transit and what's the line of questioning that they get to kind of suss that out.
When I was involved with the candidates forum, they didn't ask anybody that was on the transportation board any questions. It just came from the public for a highly contested races, which was school board, at that time, school board and city.
I have not been included in any discussions of any type of forum or otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little digging and see who puts those line of questionings together, because yeah, just in terms of my personal passion of active transportation and or transit, I'd like to see.
Usually though, in my past history, it depends on who is putting on the forum. I mean, they will sometimes take audience questions, but and they ask for audience questions, but who is ever hosting? And I dealt mostly with AUW, Association of University Women Programs. They have their own questions that they come up with, but they will ask for audience participation. So I think contact who is putting on the forum.
Okay.
And Megan, let me know. I would love to be part of that. And yeah, let me know how I can help and be involved with that.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure we're kind of like a discussion point in that conversation, because it's really important to understand where they are with that. And I don't think anybody would not support transit considering what we've accomplished. So that was my only discussion item.
Awesome, thank you. And I think the only other thing I would add to that is I really want to make sure here locally, the issue is the Columbia Gorge Express, right? and the fact that we're still funding that service through a discretionary program. I unfortunately was not able to be at the ACT meeting where our discretionary grants applications were discussed, but Kathy was, and unfortunately she's not on here anymore. But my understanding is that it was a big topic of conversation of why there was such a big ask for a sustaining service application. And so I think that is really something that we need to discuss and make sure and advocate for.
All right, unless anybody has any other discussion items, upcoming events is, Amy, you want to talk about it?
The STIF Advisory Committee meeting on tomorrow, which Elazar, you hopefully will be able to attend. And then Lisa and Megan, Dr. Larrabee, if possible. And then other than that, it's just the conference that Jeff brought up, October 27th through 30th. Myself, Tia, and Jeff will be at the conference, and but we'll still be available, obviously, as needed. But we've got a great team to run the show while we're gone.
Well, I think that's it. Is there a motion to approve the adjournment of the meeting?
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Yay, and sorry, chair votes aye. We're 2 minutes shy of the of 5:30, so adjournment at 5:28.
All right, thank you so much.
No, we're putting in the minutes. The clock works.